All right, so now we have our next caregiver, and I will hand it over to her to introduce herself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jenny. I am currently one of the caregivers for my mother. I'm also an online college student finishing up next year, but I'm juggling that and part-time job, so that's pretty much my life right now.
Mhm. Okay, so how long have you been a caregiver?
I would have to say primarily in the good chunk, 2 or 3 years, but ever since she started developing um, I guess her symptoms for Parkinson's and dementia that started off in 2013. So gradually you got into the caregiving position there. Mhm.
Okay, and then was she diagnosed in 2013? Are you able to walk me through the diagnosis experience?
She officially got diagnosed, I'd say it's either 2016 or 2017, but
Okay, and that's
2017,
with
yeah.
dementia.
hmm
Okay, all right. In terms of just your caregiving experience, how is it? Are you, in terms of managing school, your part-time job, do you have any other help? How does task management work for you?
Task management. Well, at first it was really crazy because you have everything going on and trying to manage it can be a little intense. But slowly, especially with my father and I, we tend to tag team it. So if he needs some help, I go in. Um, I usually with school, I need to manage. I have certain blocks that I have to do, but I also keep it at a flexible rate that in case something does need my help, I can go and assist or if my father needs some time off from caring, I go and cover for him. Um, it's pretty much dealing with that, working, but I know that, from work, I have to come back, or if there's something that's going on, it's usually having good open communication and also having a flexible schedule does help. So it takes a lot of practice and learning from it.
Okay. So in terms of tools that you use to kind of keep yourself organized, do you use any technology? Is something like just calendars and post-it notes that kind of your thing, or do you use anything else?
I'd say it's a good mixture in between that. Usually Google Calendar right there. It's on my phone. It's easy to access. Or like list of medications. I know we're starting to get into that because we're getting more appointments now. Uh, Also that immediately going into calendars and writing down the appointment, or else, you may forget about it. And that's really important if you don't get email updates or phone calls. um, Post-it notes for immediate, references to numbers, to doctors, or locations. I know I have a few of here for a dentist that I'm trying to contact for my mother. So um, post-its are, helpful, but if you could immediately like get into an application that you always have, or if you always have your phone nowadays, like that's great. If you get notifications, that's very helpful.
Mm. So in terms of just like support groups, I guess, how do you go to support groups? Have you attended any virtual ones? Is that something that you've incorporated into your lifestyle?
I've actually, for support groups, we did to a certain period of time, like looked for groups like that, but it's a little odd just because um, we're not the usual bunch. Like if we go, my father knows more Spanish, so even translating does um, affect it communication wise. I have to translate, and sometimes we don't clearly understand each other. So that's somewhat of a conflict. Also, the closest support group that we can go to that does speak Spanish, it's like an hour away. Um, so finding that support group is difficult, especially face to face. But he did get some support through our local church, so that is helpful. On my end, what did help was like therapy a little bit because I did get a little anxious, especially with finals and then dealing with everything. Um, that and also even online support groups through Reddit. Reddit has like I'd say their subreddits for Parkinson's and dementia are helpful. I also connected with a few other younger caregivers. That's there's a lot of connection. You imagine that caregivers are usually for the older folks, right, in their 40s or 50s, and they can't really connect to what we're dealing with, right? So that did help, especially online. connections, usually face to face. It's there's a lack of groups out there for us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I know you're kind of starting like a platform about millennial caregiving. Are you able to kind of go into that?
Yeah, so for this originally started for school. I mean, I have a class for social media and I'm learning a little bit more about it. But what I wanted to spread a little bit more awareness, or even if I can, some connection to others who are in our, generation, to see what other technology, we have access to, or even connect with others. Like we're trying to switch jobs, or we're having a kid, or we're dealing with all this stuff that, it's can be overwhelming. Um, and hopefully connect with others that there's some sort of support. When you see someone that is in a similar position, or has other friends that are caregivers, and sometimes you lose that connection of, my friends can do this and this, their lifestyle is a little different than ours. So if we can find that connection, actually feel support, right, it makes it easier.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say your experience as a millennial caregiver is different from other typical caregivers?
Um, I'd say from my situation, I'm still trying to graduate school and I'm still trying to find an internship. So that's like I'm trying to juggle a little bit of everything. Um, but when you're dealing with, I also, what I value is also taking care of my mother and helping my father out. So that there's a very, uh, I guess, a deep connection with that. That's what I really value. But I also want that importance. They're also looking for a job that is able to be flexible with us. In case something does happen in the near future, I want to be able to take some days off, or have that flexibility still, to be able to go home and take care of things if that does happen.
Hmm. What would you say what is probably the most rewarding part of being a caregiver at this point?
Hmm. I'd say the most rewarding part is um, just still being able to spend some time with her, even though the disease has developed so far, making the most of everything that we do. Um, uh, Certain people have difficulty, I guess, working with, dementia can be difficult sometimes, but, or even dealing with parking, but you learn, it opens, different experiences, that you have more empathy to people who are in similar situations, or they also go through a loved one who has a certain disease. So that it makes you more empathetic with other people. So that's very helpful. And I'm very grateful for having those experiences too. Yeah.
Okay, so what would you say that you wish you knew back then, or
Hmm.
even like now? Um, if now knowing all that you know, and you've all the things that you've learned just by this entire caregiving process.
I'd say, and it goes along with my father too, like we're still working through it, that you can't control everything. As much as we'd like to do a lot and try and give as much, help to her, there's a limit. Um, as much as we wanted to like take care of her all the time and every day, every second, we all need a break from time to time, and we can get like burnt out. It might not seem like it, but it is exhausting from time to time. So having that, luckily I have my father that we're working together, and some people are not as fortunate to have someone. um, so taking breaks is very important. um, let's see what else. Yeah, that sometimes, sometimes things are out of your control, and sometimes you have to accept that. uh, but yeah, just be easy on yourself, and it's a gradual thing. You'll get, better at it.
Yeah. Okay, and then I know you keep mentioning your father. How are you able to speak on behalf of him and his experience as being a caregiver for one significant other?
I can speak a little bit, from we do have our conversations and our talk to talks. Uh, it's also, as much as it is, seeing a role change within, my mother and I, for him, it's also seeing someone who was strong and someone who was very independent depend on you. And it's like juggling that. And also, he also has family members back in Mexico. So my grandfather is also not, he's health is like a little sensitive right now. So that's a little overwhelming, but we try and support him, whenever that happens, or whenever certain events are a little touchy, or my grandfather's not doing well, or he's having an off day. um what else? Also, yeah, trying to find not stressful situations, because especially we have a large family, and families can be a little crazy, things happen. So if he needs a break, he has to have a break. Sometimes he's a little stubborn and he wants to do everything. But I was like, Dad, relax, we have to take our breaks. I'll cover for you and go do whatever you would like to do. Take a day off, it's fine. We have it under control. So yeah, definitely he's like learning how to take breaks on himself, but he's a DIY guy. So right now with like the whole quarantine, he wants to do projects. He is like, oh, we're gonna do a goalpost out in the backyard for your nephew. He wants one, and then he wants a ramp, and then, so he's a very DIY guy. So he's like building all these projects. So that's his little hobby. So yeah, definitely learning how to take breaks. It's okay, it's not, you don't always have to be very attentive, because that does stress you out. So I think that's a lesson that he's learning.
So do both your parents live with you, or is this
Yeah.
like okay, so all of you
Mhm.
guys live together, okay. And is something like living in an assisted living or a facility been a conversation for later? Is that something that you guys have talked about? Is that something that's not really within your culture, or even just within like kind of just your family? What are your thoughts
um
on
let's see, we've talked about it, when my mother was like in the hospital. I'd say 2 years ago. um it was a conversation. It was something, do we need a nurse to come over? Like, how's the, are we looking into finding a nursing facility? And we want to have as much as like spending time with her a little bit more, but also being able to juggle that. So for us, it's, if we could do this for a long term or for a good amount of time until we can't, until we really do need help, then that's when we look into it. But it's definitely an option for us. um but we're doing as much as we can, what we can do. I know that there was a certain period that right after she left the hospital, we did have a nurse come by and help us out, a little bit of physical therapy when she could still stand. But that is an option. But I know that a lot of people don't, depending on their finances, it's a little tough, and it is a lot of a strain, especially for certain families. So we're doing what we can, what we have now.
that? Yeah. So, what if you could design an app, or if you can design some sort of technology that would have helped you and your father with the whole caregiving process, what would that be?
mm. um if we would have some sort of an access of uh I guess, look, like resources, local county resources. I know that we have a site, but sometimes it's difficult to contact them or reach them. um or physician. We were working with this recently, trying to find certain physicians or specialists that do accept our insurances, and that was a little hassle. So um, something that makes that easier, or having an immediate list of who to call or who accepts certain, having uh, direct access to that would be very helpful. Um, yeah, that would
Hmm.
help with the
Yeah, so
organization and
accessibility
that we
is
have.
definitely a big issue.
Yeah. Mm,
A lot of people go face, and also just the fact that it could be there, but we just don't know what questions to ask,
mm,
and what
mm.
resource to go through. So, in terms of those online things, did those online support groups or online forums, did those help you find those specific resources? Or was it
Um,
more kind of like emotional, relatable support?
I would say it's emotional relational support. Um, is especially just because those are for Reddit, those audiences are very broad and they can be from all over the place. So if I were to go on there seeking, local New York State resources, it's a little different. It's different for every county, so it's not really doesn't help you narrow things down. But I know that most people who post on there are very, I guess, day to day is like supportive, seeking advice. So definitely that in that realm that they do help. So um, just having a list of resources that we can directly contact or just keep calling and finding who is willing to accept us in the situation that we are in.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Has COVID been a huge barrier, especially with accessibility?
Um, I would say it is, especially in the beginning. It's still, um, you're weary of, who's exposed to what. Should they come over or even, visit from a distance? That's our concern, because we're not sure. And this is a disease that is still in development or evolving, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we're just still taking our precautions. Do we have to go out? Can we do a video conference with a doctor? So recently we were able to go to get some blood work done. That was a lot easier because they have our system to call and then you can go enter and there's no people in the waiting room. That's somewhat controlled. So that's it. Anxiety was up there, especially in the beginning. You're not sure what you're coming into, especially with this illness. So yes.
Damn. Yeah, I think like with just all the caregivers that we've spoken to, like the stories are so different, but also like fundamentally very similar
Mm-hmm.
in terms of the same issues, like regardless of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, have you felt that you were able to, so in the millennial caregiver label, have you felt that you were able to find others very easily?
Since I started, I did look for a few. It's not such a vast, list of people, but I did make some connections with a few people on there. Um, so that's helping. Just seeing that I'm not the only one, this age and caring for a loved one, right? Um, so that it is helping, especially putting your, story out there or putting your situation out there does help seek some, connections with others.
Earlier on, um, during the diagnoses, do you think that something like the Memories app would have been useful, or would it be something that you would think about using now in terms of the scheduling of medications and events and getting reminders?
That would help, especially with everything going on. Doctors' appointments often, um, is having the ability to seek, what medication she's on now or which medications we're trying for what. Having everything concise in an app would be very helpful. If I could have the calendar would be nice also incorporated, so I don't have to keep switching through other apps. I could just have it in one app. That would be helpful too.
Okay. Yeah, so we're just looking for beta testers, people to just kind of critique our app to add different features. So right now there is no overall calendar, but that is something that we're thinking of incorporating, especially because a lot of the interviews that we've had so far have mentioned that calendars is to die for,
Mm-hmm.
essentially,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of just keeping everything on track. Would you be willing to be a beta tester, or just a tester app and just kind of give us feedback? Because our overall goal is to kind of improve the caregiving and dementia space.
That would be great. Yeah, definitely. I'll give you guys some detailed feedback on how it is. Yes, that'd be
Perfect.
awesome.
Thank you. And I think the kind of final question that we usually kind of have is what would be, and if you were just to choose like one lesson, I guess, to kind of give an early caregiver, what would you, what kind of advice would you give them?
I would say it's it may be scary in the beginning, but once you start getting to know how it is, it gets a lot easier. So yeah, it's a little crazy in the beginning because it's a new world, it's a new, place to be in, but you'll own it, But later on, it's gonna be a lot easier. You'll know how to manage it. You become a better person. Task managing can be, um, if you didn't have it then you're gonna definitely have it like later on in a few years. So definitely, you'll it's some good skills that you'll gain. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Just giving all the insight that you provided is definitely going to be so useful, not only for us as we continue building our app, but also for caregivers just who value other people's experiences.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to, talk and talk about my personal experience. Hopefully it helps others, definitely.